Certainly is, and you look at a place like Ascension, Iberville as well, all the help we could probably get, because again, we are not done. The governor is set to speak today as well. Originally at 3:30, now that has been moved to 1 o'clock. We're going to cover that for you. Actually, we're going to cover all that for you. Our teams are already in. They have been in. They've never left. They're actually just right now running out the building to get after your stories. You can actually be a part of that as well. Please, if you go up to you see the little top, the little hamburger menu right up here? If you go up to the very, very top, it'll take you back to the home screen on the 9 News app. And this is kind of what you open up to. I was just in the top stories. Right down here is a great way for you to help us tell your stories. It's the 9 reports, the See It, Snap It, Send It that we talk so much about. Right there is an easy way to send in your pictures, to send in your videos. Help us tell your story, but please remember, always do it safely. That is the beginning and the end. Steps 1 through 10, do it safely, and then please, yes, help us tell your story. All right, the story again, though, is going to be the forecast. So where are we right now, and what are we looking forward to over the next number of days of rainy weather? Dr. Steve Caparata in the First Alert Weather Center. All right, Steve, how are we doing right now, first of all, I guess?
I guess relatively speaking, we're doing better out there, Matt, but still some rain out there. Just couldn't shake it through the overnight for a while. We had this steady progression west to east during the overnight, and then it just kind of put on the brakes, and we've still got a band of rain impacting Metro Baton Rouge. Can you kind of see the swirl here moving north of Lake Pontchartrain? So as that disturbance lifts to north, that'll kind of take a wave of rain with it. However, as we bring it into Metro Baton Rouge, we are still seeing some downpours developing this morning. Some of these about, looks like, cross the river into some of the harder hit areas. Parts of Iberville Parish did pick up some heavy rain, but crossing the river in St. Gabriel and eventually headed towards Prairieville, southern part of Baton Rouge. At least a few downpours. Nothing like what we saw last night, but obviously don't need any additional rain. Speaking of that, Lake Charles also doesn't need any additional rain. The airport itself picked up over 12 inches of rain in Lake Charles yesterday. Storms lining up along the coast. It looked kind of ugly a couple hours ago, and I'll tell you what, this may not be the worst news for Lake Charles. When you get storms lining up along the coast, kind of cuts off the flow from the Gulf of Mexico. That may kind of shield Lake Charles for a while. We'll keep an eye on things for them. Obviously, they have been through so much over the last year, but let's focus back in on our local areas. So we have one flash flood warning still in effect as it stands right now. That's for southeastern parts of East Baton Rouge Parish, a little bit of Iberville, a little bit of Ascension, a little bit of Livingston. That's in effect. So it's 9:19 right now. It's in effect for another 41 minutes. There was another flash flood warning south of this one. That was allowed to expire at 9 a.m. after being in effect all night. So that's at least a little bit of hopeful news to see one of those warnings expire. A flash flood watch remains in effect for the vast majority of us through at least noon tomorrow. Still think there's a decent chance that gets extended farther out in time as you go west of the Atchafalaya Basin. That flash flood watch actually in effect through 7 p.m. on Thursday. Now, there is at least some reasoning for that. As we get towards the end of the week, things are going to gradually dry out east to west. That's how the larger scale weather pattern is shaping up. So rains will hold on longer in southwest Louisiana than they will here in southeast Louisiana the way it looks. But still, I think our flash flood watch may have to be extended a bit. All right, here's the big story, the rainfall over the last 24 hours. And it wasn't just us. You can see these pockets where the rain just came down in buckets from southeast Texas. Around Beaumont was hard hit. Lake Charles, you heard about that. Lafayette had some 5 to 10 inch rains in spots. And then we got this bullseye around Baton Rouge. So I had somebody on Facebook a little while ago saying, you know, you guys get all this technology. What good is it for? And my counter to that was, I said, well, yesterday morning, the message I was delivering was rain totals on average 2 to 4 inches, but totals that could be considerably higher in spots. That's kind of what we saw. Now, I'm not saying a forecast 12 or 13 inches of rainfall, and good luck finding anybody that really forecast totals to get that high. But nonetheless, we were under flash flood watch. We talked about totals that could go considerably higher in spots. Yesterday afternoon, if you follow me on social media, I said, watch out. What's happening in Lake Charles, that could translate eastward. So we tried to give you a heads up. To the best of our ability. We can't give you a detail down to your neighborhood, but we try to give you a heads up. And just to give you an idea, look at the gradient across East Baton Rouge Parish. If you go up, say, closer to Zachary, maybe 2 to 3 inches of rainfall. And then you go here in extreme southeastern EBR, we had some totals topping 13 inches. So just across our parish, you go maybe as little as 2 inches to over 13 inches of rain, but you see that bullseye that showed up. And really, we had this area in red from southeastern EBR down through Ascension, Iberville, down into northern Assumption, 6 to 12 inches or more of rainfall. Matt, I go on for days with graphics, but let me bring you back in and see what may give some what you're thinking. I know both of you and I not only had sleepless nights because of work, but we were also worried about our own homes.
Yeah, and that's the thing. You know, 2016 is fresh in everybody's mind down here, as it is. A rainstorm of any significance brings on that memory and a little bit of PTSD. So yeah, that rain shower comes in last night. I'm hearing it in buckets, like you're talking about, for just hours. And I'm 4 houses down from a pretty major creek in this area, the one that got angry and flooded the neighborhood last year. So one of the questions I had coming in, and one of the questions a lot of people have is this like a 2016? And now when you get down to it, I know, and you do as well, doesn't care where the rain comes from. If it's flooding your house, it doesn't matter what kind of system it is, and I get that. But this is a little bit different from 16, right? How is it different?
Yeah, it's the key is where the rain fell, at least so far. So if we take our bullseye that we have right now, kind of centered here near Bayou Manchac down into Ascension Parish, you really have to shift that northward 20, 30 miles or more to get what happened in 2016, and that's really important. So that meant more of the rain came down across the upper parts of the Amite and the Comite basins and drained on down. And, you know, a lot of the flooding that occurred back in 2016, obviously the rainfall was the ingredient, but then the rivers came. And, you know, as you talked about in your instance, you know, it was a couple days later, right?
Yeah,
Matt?
exactly right. I was a couple days after the rain started, and it was what you were about to talk about, the backwater flooding. That had nowhere to go.
Right. So far, that's going to be a much, much lower issue across a good chunk of the basin because the rain fell farther south. Now, having said that, especially just south of Denham Springs on the Amite, so from Bayou Manchac down through Port Vincent French Settlement, that rain is going to have a significant impact, and we're going to have to track the river levels there. But even there, as it stands right now, we're still not talking about levels anywhere close to 2016,
right.
But we are talking about impactful flooding. I've got those numbers. We can show you that in a moment. But the key difference here is where the rain came down. And that's the number one most important aspect. But number two is also the magnitude. You got to remember in 2016, we had bullseyes as high as 25 to 30 inches of rainfall from like near Central up through Watson. The highest totals we've seen so far on the order of about 13, maybe 14 inches of rain. So that's almost half of the maximum values we had in 2016.
When we talk about comparing 16 to this, because it's just so easy to do for somebody who floods, and you see this kind of thing happen here again, how important, and we were looking at it, the river levels and the major creeks and bayou levels, and you saw that level just spike up. You were showing us some of that this morning. Numbers for some of these creeks that are record-breaking and some that are close. So how important is it? I mean, I think I know the answer. How important is it that down basin drainage remains open and clear? So you don't want a lot of local rain in the southern part of the basin either, because that would just add that liquid dam and make it more difficult to drain.
No, absolutely. And the other thing we've got to track too is the wind direction in the coming days, because all this eventually flows into Lake Maurepas and some of it kind of the swamps around Lake Maurepas, the marsh. But, you know, if we start getting into a persistent south and southeast wind, which unfortunately we are going to be a little bit of that, that's going to slow the drainage. So that's going to be a bit of an issue to track. And just to get to, let me skip ahead, show you kind of to a couple of your points. Number one, I know this is probably a little hard for people at home to see, but this is just one rain gauge. This is a USGS rain gauge. This is Ward Creek at Highland Road. This is very close to Healing Place Church. Not far from Rufino's restaurant. This was one of the bigger rain totals that we got. Over 13 inches of rain at this gauge. And then when I dug down into the details and looked at it a little more closely, about 9.5 of that, maybe 13.5, I think we're sitting at around now. About 9.5 inches of that 13.5 came down in about 3 hours.
Oh my God.
And then we can say, well, how rare is 9.5 inches of rain in 3 hours? Now, it's kind of an estimate. It's kind of we use statistics and some statistical techniques to kind of estimate it. And it's a little bit of voodoo. Jay and I were just talking about this at a hurricane prep meeting last week in Livingston Parish. You know, we only have about 100 years or so of reliable rain data. So when you start getting into estimating 200-year rains, 500-year rains,
exactly.
1,000-year rains, how confident are we really in that? Not so confident. But if we want to dig into that, there's a table that's out there from NOAA. You can take a look. How much rain fell in how short of a time, and it'll give you an estimate of how rare that is. So if we take 9.5 inches in 3 hours here in Baton Rouge, the estimate is there's anywhere from roughly about a 0.5% to a 0.1% chance of that occurring in any given year. I don't like to talk too much about 100-year rains, 200-year rains, but if you want to go down that road, what that equates to is anywhere from a 200-year rain to maybe as rare as a 1,000-year rain when you look at 9.5 inches in 3 hours. Now think about that. Anywhere from 200 to 1,000. That should give you an idea of how much we're really just kind of doing a rough estimate on this. It's a pretty big range, right?
It absolutely is. And like you're talking about, it doesn't, whether you put a name on it, it's not going to matter if your living room has water in it. But you do get to kind of begin to gauge the power of this system that has rolled through. And depending on the next few days, Steve, this system will be just absolutely horrible or absolutely devastating, and it all depends on the next few days and where that rain falls.
Yeah, where the rain falls and how much more. So
Sure.
let me pull up, I'm going to come back to this graph behind me in a moment. Let me pull up what the weather prediction, NOAA's Weather Prediction Center has right now in their outlook that came out earlier this morning. So this is rainfall going forward through Sunday morning, and really for most of us, most of this will fall through Friday. They've got roughly, on average, 2 to 4 inches of additional rainfall coming down. You know, 2 to 4, even in some of the harder hit areas, that wouldn't be terrible. Probably going to cause some more rises. It'll impact the rivers, but 2 to 4 wouldn't be terrible. The concern is there could be more isolated heavy bands that set up anytime over the next couple of days. I'm a little bit optimistic that we've had so much storminess overnight and this morning that may limit the potential for real heavy rain today. We'll keep an eye on that, but into tomorrow we could see additional bands setting up, into Thursday additional bands, and if we get additional heavy bands where you could see maybe double this, 4 to 8, that's where you could get into more trouble. But right now we're kind of telling everybody to plan on an additional 2 to 4 inches of rainfall. So where that falls, as you said, Matt, is going to be key. I want to talk about one other thing real quick. You were talking about the local creeks and bayous. So right now, the flooding that we saw overnight and this morning, not so much tied to sort of our bigger regional rivers like the Amite and Comite. This has more so been tied to the creeks, the bayous, and just street flooding, but just evidence of that. So here's Bayou Fountain. This is near Bayou Fountain near Bluebonnet in Baton Rouge. It crested at 15.7 feet overnight. That actually surpassed the record that was set in 2016. Now, again, more of the heavy rain this event fell closer to Bayou Fountain than it did back in 2016. Not a surprise, but still, that should give us some evidence of how heavy this rain was. We can take a look at a few more sites. So this is Ward Creek. This is near Drusilla, Jefferson Highway. This one crested at 31.2 feet early this morning, just shy of the record, about a half foot shy of the record, 31.8. That's maybe even more impressive because the records here date back to 1962, about 60 years. So we almost broke a 60-year-old record here for the gauge that's right there around Drusilla and Jefferson. So again, a big number. And we saw We showed you some of the rescues that happened overnight off Jefferson Highway. Is it Devonshire? Is that the name of
One of them, yeah.
It's around Jefferson Airline.
Yep.
That had significant flooding. No surprise when you see that. All right, 2 more to show you. This is Dawson Creek, again near Bluebonnet. It crested around 23 feet, surpassing the previous record of 22.8. I think that one was also from 2016. So another record crest on one of our, relatively speaking, smaller creeks and bayou. And then Jones Creek. This is not talking about the road, the actual creek where it crosses Old Hammond Highway. This one got up to 38.7 overnight. That's about 3 feet below where it hit in 2016. But man, you think about that, that's still a significant number. So that's why we've been dealing with the flooding that we've seen. It's that, and I get the frustration that everybody has and wonders about, are the pumps running?
Drainage,
what's
right.
wrong with the drainage in my neighborhood? And there are issues.
There
There's
are.
no doubt
Sure.
about that. But I tell you, in the areas that got 9.5 inches of rain
Yeah.
in 3 hours, I don't think I'm going to see in my lifetime a drainage system that can handle that, especially when you consider we're building more neighborhoods, there's more concrete going up. The issue is only going to get worse as time goes by. That's a reality we've got to understand. Flooding, the flood threat for just about everybody, anybody that's in an urban area, is only going to get a bit worse with time. There's only so much we can engineer and do as we put more and more concrete down.
Yeah, absolutely right. I've had that conversation with so many people as well. You see more and more concrete going up, planning commission, zoning commission, the green light, a lot of this stuff, and that's going to be worrisome. You take away the ability for some of this rain to soak in naturally, you got to funnel it off somewhere, and our drainage issues are becoming worse and worse and worse. And so, yeah, when you talk about huge drainage things like Comeet diversion, and then some of the smaller ones in East Baton Rouge Parish, you're right. I know everybody wants them done yesterday, especially after like the day we've had. But yeah, 10 inches in 3 hours, that's a lot for any system to handle. You're right.
It is. And so another key point to make here, Matt, is that we've kind of hit on this indirectly, but no two rain events are alike. Human nature is we want to compare things. And we always say this with hurricanes too. Be careful about comparing because no two storms are alike. Same thing with these rain events. So personal experience here for me. I live in southeast Baton Rouge. I've only been in my home for about 7 years, but a few major events. So 2016 flood. Most of you, I think, will remember June 6, 2019, I think is the date. You remember that morning where it just dumped and we had significant flooding here in parts of Baton Rouge. At my house, last night was worse than 2016 and worse than June 6, 2019. It was right on, about to be in my garage. Did get in several garages in my neighborhood and got bad enough that we happened to have a few leftover sandbags in the garage, put those by the front door because it got close. And that was worse than those other two flood events. So everyone is different because it matters where the rain falls, how hard it comes down closer to you. Is the river in play, or is the creeks and bayous? So many variables to consider.
Location, duration, all of it. You're right. Everything matters. Where can we find you guys between now and noon, Steve?
All right, yeah, we'll be all over it. Jeff Morrow's in behind me. He'll get you through noon show. Matt, if we got 1 minute, I'd be remiss if I didn't show the river stages real quick. That's the last thing I wanted to show you. So for the A meet at Denham Springs, right now 26 feet, forecast to hit 33 feet. So we are forecasting flooding. We're just not talking about anywhere close to 2016 levels. Offhand, I think Denham Springs hit maybe 44 and a half in 2016, so you're still looking at 10, 11 feet below that. Pokey DeLattery, I just texted him, got an updated readings, now at 9.4 feet at Bayou Manchac Point, which is above flood stage. 12 and a half was the forecast. So that 9.4 looks like it's running above the curve. So this number could go up, and could go up a decent amount. We'll have to keep an eye on that. And that kind of goes back to my point where especially the lower half of the Amite Basin may be in for some of the bigger rises. Denham Springs upwards not going to be probably as bad, but given where that rain fell, Bayou Manchac down, you guys need to watch closely. Port Vincent, 6.2 right now, forecasted crest just under 10 feet. French settlement, the River Forecast Center can trigger forecasts. They don't do them regularly. We don't have one as of yet. Right now it's sitting at 3.6. Maurepas is the meet at Maurepas sitting at 3.8. A little bit of good news. The co-meet at Jor right now is at 21 feet. It already looks like that one may have crested this morning for now. It was forecast to get up around 25, may fall well shy of that. The key is, especially with the co-meet, we always talk about this a rapid response river. So it's a small basin, so it rises and falls rapidly as the rains come and go. So if we get additional heavy rain, that could easily come back up. But it seems like, for now at least, that one may have crested. Two more to show you here quickly. The Tickfaw, right now Montpelier forecast to get about a foot above flood stage. Holden forecast to get about 2 feet above flood stage. Springfield, another one of these sites we don't get a forecast, but it's coming up. It's at 4 feet, so that's another site we'll have to watch. And finally, the Tangipahoa, the only site right now forecast to get above flood along the Tangipahoa is Robert. Forecast to get up to about 17.5 feet.
A lot to keep track of. Steve, thank you, brother. Appreciate it.
Yep.
Stay dry, stay safe out there. Again, these guys will be updating you all morning long, all day long. Next in the big studio, you'll see them obviously at noon o'clock, but it doesn't matter the time. If there's an issue, you know they're going to be breaking in. We will be breaking in. You can always follow them online on social as well. So a quick rundown of what you can expect in the coming hours. 10 o'clock, again, Mayor President Sharon Western Broom set to address the city parish response, EBR's city parish response to all this. That's coming up at 10 o'clock. The governor's press conference has been moved from 3:30 to 1 o'clock. We'll be sure to cover that for you as well. In the 9 News app right now, a running list of sandbag locations from East Baton Rouge down to Ascension Parish, a couple of the harder hit parishes from last night into the morning. All the closures as well, all the school closures, business closures, that kind of thing. Everything updated as soon as we get it. A running list, a changing list waiting for you in the 9 News app. As I told Steve, be dry, be safe. You as well. Be as safe as you can out there. Stay as dry as you can. And again, let us know what's going on in your part of the world. Just do it safely. Stay safe. We'll see you again when we see you.